Special Counsel's probe, tweeting earlier today, a total witch hunt. Attorney-client privilege is dead. Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul with me now. Senator, good day to you, and a lot to get through per usual. What do you think this does now on the investigative front? Sean Spicer last night suggested both sides have now escalated this legal battle. What do you think?
Well, the first question we ought to ask is, what does this have to do with Russia? I thought the special prosecutor was investigating Russian collusion. Going after someone's personal attorney is a great overstep, I think, in the authority of the prosecutor. And this is why I have opposed really having special prosecutors for almost anything, because I think they abuse their authority. So I think Mueller has abused his authority. Now they say, well, he asked somebody else, another U.S. attorney, to do it. Yes, but this is becoming at the behest of Mueller. So I think this investigation no longer has much to do with Russia. But I would warn people around America who say, that don't like the president, this is just fine because it's against President Trump. This is an enormous power that can be used against anybody. You remember what Chuck Schumer said a couple of months ago? He says, if you cross the intelligence agencies, they can screw you 6 ways to Sunday. This is about enormous power, prosecutorial power, but also power in the intelligence communities. We have to rein this in, or every American citizen is exposed to this kind of abuse of power.
How would you rein it in? If
we shouldn't have these special
you have a major political crisis on your hands. Go ahead.
It's hard now. You're right. It's actually hard politically to fire Mueller. But the thing is, we never should have had Mueller in the first place, because we've given too much power to a prosecutor who's no longer looking at Russia. He's looking at some kind of personal dealings with the president's lawyer. And imagine, once they get this, they've got all of the information that the president has ever discussed with the attorney, and they say, we're not going to use the stuff that's attorney-client privilege, but they're going to read it. And you think once they've read it, it might give them ideas of other places to look? There's this concept called parallel construction. They don't actually use the information they read, but they now have that information and can use it to go snooping in other areas. So really, this is a wide open, the president's right, it's a witch hunt, but it's a wide open thing. And it's a mistake to ever have these special prosecutors. That's why I've opposed it, even for Andy McCabe and for Peter Strzok and all these other people who abuse their office. Let's prosecute them in a normal fashion. Let's don't appoint a prosecutor that can go everywhere.
How'd you feel about Ken Starr in the 90s?
I may or may not have been as consistent back then, to tell you the truth, but I've come to believe that now these special prosecutors have too much power. And so, yes, I think I have learned over time that we shouldn't have these special prosecutors. You're starting to
sound like Alan Dershowitz. Another topic now. That's a compliment. Scott Pruitt, head of the EPA, has been, by all measures, very successful in the cabinet. And by all measures, he is now a target of the left. And perhaps some of it is his own fault. We're waiting to find out more. You sent out this tweet just a few days ago. Scott Pruitt's likely the bravest and most conservative member of Trump's cabinet. We need him to help real Donald Trump drain the regulatory swamp. Is he in trouble right now, or do you think the president hangs on with him at the moment?
If the president stays behind him, he can survive. And Scott Pruitt really has been the champion for deregulation. And deregulation has been a big part of our economy growing again, of the success of the stock market. For my state, the war on coal that was led by Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, we've stopped that thanks to Scott Pruitt. If we lose Scott Pruitt and we get some squishy person in there, we won't be able to keep fighting this regulatory war, or against this regulatory war. So no, Scott Pruitt needs to remain, and he's frankly the most conservative leader of the EPA we've ever had, and that's why the left hates him so much. All of this stuff is trumped up by the left, and I really think that you'll see that this ultimately end is partisan politics.
Well, there are about 189 senators, sarcasm, questioning Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook at 2 o'clock today. You are not one of them, but you have been leading this charge about privacy in America, and it's sort of the thread you can see runs through the arguments you have made into what's happening with Facebook and the questions that its users may have today. What do you think comes of this in terms of a government/congressional role and a company that has ballooned in a matter of 8 years to have 2 billion customers worldwide? What do you do about that when you know it's up to you, Senator, as to whether or not you want to sign up for a service that's essentially free?
I think the main thing is that people don't get carried away with hysteria and overreact and say, we're going to have a lot of regulations on speech on the internet. The internet has really equalized all forms of speech, right, left, center, up, down. You have a lot more speech because of the internet. So we have to be very careful about the federal government getting involved with regulation. That being said, the most important question is, did Facebook violate their privacy agreement they have with their customers? If they did, their customers do have recourse in court. And if 87 million people had their information taken and it defies or goes against or violates their privacy agreement, that's a real problem for Facebook. But that's sort of a legal question. I think I'd rather see it in the courts and less so in a show trial bringing CEOs to Washington.
4 hours from now. Senator, thank you. All right, come on back. Rand Paul there on